One of the most iconic comic characters wears a slingshot thong with a collar and boots. She drinks blood, but she's a hero, on the scene way before Blade, preceding the 90s Bad Girls era by decades, but still eternal and classic, and has one of the worst adaptations to film, and I love it. We're going to talk about it. Today on Graphic Adaptations, we're going to talk about Vampirella. Be honest, have you ever read any Vampirella? Now, I'm sure some of you watching this video have, but like so many more of you, I hadn't. I owned a comic shop for 15 years, and I never read one. I always felt like, after all the pinups and covers, like I knew enough about Vampy to throw her in the bin with all the other cheesecake fluff characters relying on TNA to sell their books. You assume there's more to it than that? Yeah, there is. There's a sexual revolution in the 60s, and while the women's revolution didn't get them equal pay, even now, it did give them extra freedom or agency to be able to express their sexuality and how they dressed and presented themselves. And this led some pop culture icons to reveal themselves in pretty alluring clothing, and they became sex symbols, like Ursula Andress in James Bond, or Jane Fonda in Barbarella, Raquel Welch in 1 Million Years BC, and Vampirella appearing in comics. Vampirella was originally the host of her own horror anthology magazine created by Forrest J. Ackerman, taking up the reins from the defunct Tales from the Crypt. The stories were incredibly similar in tone and intent, and the publishers had found a really sneaky way around the comics code by simply designating this comic as a magazine. That's pretty clever.
Life, finds a way.
Each issue would have a few stories introduced by Vampirella, and then usually one story where she was the main subject. And in these, we get to understand her as a character. Vampirella is actually an alien from a planet where the rivers are filled with blood. An astronaut lands on planet Draculon, and Vampirella goes back to Earth with them to hunt down her kind that prey on humanity. But that doesn't really matter too much, because Vampirella's origin has changed many times over the years. Sometimes Draculon isn't even actually real, and sometimes it is, and sometimes it only exists in hell, and sometimes it only exists in her mind. And Vampirella's also a daughter of Lilith from Adam and Eve Bible stuff. It's a little exhausting. Now, I only read the first half dozen issues of the original series before recording this video, but I'm aware there are many different runs over the years with an impressive roster of comic writer legends like Mark Millar, Grant Morrison, Kurt Busiek, and Warren Ellis, Dan Abnett, Gail Simone. Like, it's a long list. If you have a favorite run, feel free to suggest it below in the comments. Now, with that cursory knowledge of Vampirella and her mythology, let's take a look at this film. So, the first thing to mention is that it's a Roger Corman production, but not just a feature production. Vampirella was part of a deal with Showtime to bundle up a dozen films with small budgets and get them all made in short order. There are a few other noteworthy films in that run as well, like Black Scorpion 1 and 2 and Humanoids of the Deep, so super cheap budgets by the exploitation king, Roger Corman. The second thing to know is that it's a Wynorski, a Jim Wynorski film, and that makes it special already, but also maybe not good already. Jim Wynorski is my favorite B-movie director. He's audacious, his work is varied and almost always entertaining on some level. Movies like Sorority House Massacre 2 and Return of the Swamp Thing set the tone for you guys to know what kind of movie Vampirella would be destined to become. And a quick glance at any random scene will bear this out. Even if all the budget had been poured into the Vampirella body thong, it would have been better than whatever this red rubber diaper thing is. It looks like it was made out of a discounted fetish outfit from a skeezy sex shop. Like, it looks like what it probably was, a compromise between a totally impractical filming nightmare of a slingshot thong that would never cover the actress during fight scenes or walking scenes or talking scenes.
Well, you can't go around like that.
Why not?
That's why not. Do you have any idea how gorgeous you are?
So the practical element of, like, it doesn't fall off, and then there's the logical human respect aspect. Like, how ridiculous is it to have a main character dressed like a really cheap stripper who got lost on her way to a bachelor party? Like, I'm sure that the actress Talissa Soto would have preferred more dignity, but she signed up for a Wynorski Vampirella movie. Dignity's not in the cards, I'm afraid. Soto was a Bond girl appearing in the better of Timothy Dalton's 2 James Bond films, License to Kill. I know her from Mortal Kombat playing Lady Katana, but her post-model acting career is all over the place in terms of big budgets or little budgets, good films or Vampirella. And to make matters worse, Wynorski's on record saying he hates the film, that he didn't want Soto, and man, if you get a glimpse of how irascible and grumpy Wynorski can be on set when he isn't happy, then you can imagine how crappy it must have been for her to work with a dude who's got no filter. The plot has a little bit of Superman 2 in there. Vlad, played by Roger Daltrey from The Who, is the General Zod type, exiled from his own planet and then on Earth being confronted by our main hero. I do like that the main ideas and origin of the character was maintained. The alien planet, having rivers of blood and all that kind of stuff, but the endless, tiresome foot chases through industrial factory stuff was pretty tough to sit through. The entire climax of the film is pretty weak. Unless you're laughing watching her run in boots up and down stairs and across the room, it's fairly excruciating. Daltrey hams it up, but his leathery mug doesn't come across as ageless, sexy vampire and more aged, crusty, creepy, washed-up rock star, especially as a foil to the young Soto. But there are other cameos that are fun, like there's a John Landis cameo.
Did you ever see It, the Terror from Beyond Space?
No. Why?
Could be our passenger.
As well as a small role for Phantasm's own Angus Scrim. Another cute touch is a cameo by a young fictional Forrest J. Ackerman meeting what is suggested to be his future creation.
Forey. My name's Forey. Forey Ackerman. Well, pleased to meet you.
Like as if he met her and then created the comic that we know.
Ella. The vampire girl. Vampirella.
It's cute. Now, way back in the 70s, I read online that there were plans for Hammer Horror to make their version of Vampirella as a film, with Valerie Leone as a possible lead, and I think we really missed out on that. Not getting that made, you know? I mean, it would have to be a better movie than this one. Wynorski's 1996 Vampirella has got some charm to it in a B-movie kind of camp way, but it's not going to get any rave reviews. I understand the nature of the production going into making this movie for Corman, probably shooting in less than a week. I mean, to give you an idea of what kind of creative environment Roger Corman films were made in this same batch of films are a few remakes of classic Corman films like Bucket of Blood, Piranha, and The Wasp Woman, and this was done to save time and money by not needing to write new scripts. One of the remakes was Not of This Earth, which Corman directed in 1957. Well, Wynorski also had remade Not of This Earth in 1988, and he did it by making a bet with Corman that he could do it in less time and for less money than Corman made his for. But like, at what cost? I mean, I guess not much financial cost, at least. The Wynorski remake of Not of This Earth ends up being a more notorious film for other reasons, since it was star Tracy Lord's first acting role after doing porn, and this is only the start of Wynorski hiring porn stars as his actresses, but that's a whole different story. And it's not even the same remake of Not of This Earth that's in this batch of Roger Corman Presents movies. I just wanted to acknowledge the conditions that Vampirella was likely made under because of this whole studio or outside independent Roger Corman studio version of productions. Still, I think the way that I might have tried to deal with a much lower budget than I would have liked would have been to return to her anthology roots and have Vampirella host the stories that she's telling us, like Elvira or The Crypt Keeper. So most of the stories could be more grounded and less expensive to shoot, and then maybe have Vampirella tell her story last, and maybe it's a bit longer than the others. But like, you could probably get more out of a shorter runtime for her story. And it might be more exciting not to have to worry about filling the runtime. I'll see you guys next week.